Shields up, Ironbreakers. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the announcement trailer of Light No Fire, which, if you take away the trailer for Monster Hunter Wilds during the Game Awards, this was definitely the other trailer that hyped me up the most. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Light No Fire, this is a game that is coming to us from the same team that worked on No Man's Sky. And I know there's a lot of people that only played No Man's Sky back when it released, and then they never touched the game again because it wasn't what they were expecting. Now, me personally, I enjoyed the release experience of No Man's Sky. I recognize that it wasn't perfect. It definitely had a lot of problems, but I still enjoyed that gameplay that they had there. You know, I like flying around on spaceships. I like the sci-fi setting. I like just existing in a universe where I can go anywhere. Like, look, I've played over 500 hours of Elite Dangerous. You better believe I had myself some good times with No Man's Sky. But ever since the release of No Man's Sky, that game has been updated like to the nth degree. And, you know, the team has been working tirelessly whenever it came to that game for the last 10 years or so, I believe, just adding update on top of update on top of update completely for free. And I understand, you know, they kind of like messed up the release significantly, but they've completely turned that game around, and the amount of value that you can get from No Man's Sky nowadays is absolutely ridiculous. Like, this is one of those games that you could potentially play for hundreds upon hundreds of hours if you really just want to engage with all of the systems that they have in that game. And it is also tremendously fun. So personally, I'm pretty happy with my experience with No Man's Sky overall. I understand that there's some hesitation there because there was a lot of hype around No Man's Sky. And guess what? Sean Murray is pretty much doing it again for this new game, which is Light No Fire. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the trailer to get us started. I'm not sure if the music is going to be able to be played on YouTube. So if if when you see the trailer, you actually hear some other different music in the background, that is why, because again, I don't know if this is copyrighted or not. We'll see. But I'm going to be watching the trailer, and then I'm going to be pulling up some more information that I currently have about the game and the potential release date and all of that stuff. And then we're going to be, doing my traditional pause every 5 seconds to explain what is going on in the trailer and my theories and all of that stuff. And we're going to just basically dive giga deep into Light No Fire, because this is a game that I'm definitely going to be wanting to cover. I believe it might be releasing next year, but we shall see if that is the case or not. But for now, let's take a look at this trailer. So I don't know what it is with Hello Games, Sean Murray, and these red balls because you also have a red ball just like this one inside the Atlas. Maybe it's some kind of like a vague reference that these two games are somehow connected, but we'll get a little bit more deep into that as we proceed throughout the video. So I figured the next best thing after watching the trailer, we should watch all of the words that Sean Murray talked with our buddy Jeff Keighley during the Game Awards. So they had this presentation where they showed like a bunch of trailers for all of the No Man's Sky content that has been added to the game throughout the years, and then there was an interview segment with Jeff Keighley. Let's take a look.
That right there was No Man's Sky, a game we announced 10 years ago with this guy right here, Sean Murray. Sean, looks like the content keeps rolling in 2024. But what does the next decade look like for Hello Games?
Well, to start with, next year is going to be a really big year for No Man's Sky. Like you said, I've been working on it for 10 years now, and I still really love it, still really enjoy it. But what people don't know is that for the last 5 years, we've been working on something new.
Another game.
Yeah, something very different, something maybe more ambitious. You know, for...
Here we go.
So, more ambitious is an interesting term to be using, considering that your last game you generated, what was it, 18 quintillion planets? So, you know, obviously those planets didn't really have a whole lot of depth to them. I mean, sure, there's a lot of stuff that you can do in a lot of these planets, but at the end of the day, it's like, you know, you can boil it down to a couple of procedurally generated events, and then there's some more elaborate quests. But the thing is, those quests can progress almost on any planet that you want, which is actually quite impressive when you think about all of the technology behind the way that all of these systems operate and intertwine with one another. I would actually say that Hello Games, based on what I've experienced in No Man's Sky, is currently one of the studios that has potentially some of the best understanding when it comes to procedural generation. From all of the procedural generation that I've seen pretty much from any game that I've personally played that has procedural generation in it, the stuff that is in No Man's Sky is hands down the most impressive one. Let me know if you guys disagree with me in the comment section down below. I know that there's definitely some interesting procedural generation projects out there, but I think nothing is really as impressive as the current state of No Man's Sky.
Tell us a bit about it, Sean.
Well, for No Man's Sky, we generated a whole universe of kind of sparse, alien-looking planets, and that wasn't easy, you know, it was hard, but there is something that's much harder that we wanted to do. For our new game, we wanted to create an Earth, you know, something as varied, a planet that is as varied as a universe, something bigger than Earth, something with, you know, mountains, real mountains, not video game mountains, but mountains that are...
I want to see mountains, Gandalf!
...miles high, taller than Everest, that when you climb to the top of them and look out, you can see rivers and canyons and continents, you know, you can see oceans.
So it's just like...
Dude, I just realized, at the time I didn't, but there's even more references to Lord of the Rings there. I was just making a meme, but it's like, you know, mountains, I want to see mountains. Then he's like, rivers. That's also something that Bilbo says to Gandalf, if I remember correctly. I mean, it might just be a coincidence. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but there definitely seems to be some type of like Lord of the Rings theme going on.
Like an open world planet kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, the first real open world, right? Something without boundaries. And we're going to let everyone play in it together. It's, you know, a place where people can live out their sort of adventures together.
Well, we can't wait.
So there's an interesting thing, which is when he says we're going to let everyone play in there together. Personally, look, I just want 4-player co-op, bro. I just want, listen, I don't need to have 1 million players in the planet. That ain't me. It's like, listen, just let me play with like 4 of my friends. I'll be happy. Okay? I don't need 1 million players. That's all good.
To take a look at it. We have anything tonight or future? Or?
Yeah, so we have a trailer.
Oh.
And, you know, it's quite a small team that's working on it. Yeah. There's about a dozen of us. Actually, everyone's here. Everyone from the team is here. We're
very...
The level of ambition from this studio is like, oh yeah, there's about a dozen of us working on this game. We're going to make Earth. Like, what? Excuse, there's 12 people working on this game? All right. I mean, just remind yourselves of the trailer that we just watched. A dozen people. Okay? All right.
Excited to share this. You and I have been talking about this one for years.
Yeah, we're super nervous, you know, but really excited. If people like it, this is a game I would like to still be updating 10 years from now.
All right, so Game Awards 2033. We'll be back. But no, let's take a look. This is such an incredible project, and I'm honored that we get to show it off. Should we do it, Sean?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here we go.
So this is when they then showed the trailer. I just wanted to show the interview there. It doesn't really give us a lot of details when it comes to that. The game is currently available to be wish listed over on Steam. The only stuff that they have on here is the same trailer that we just watched. Then they have a couple of screen grabs, which is just stuff from the trailer, which we're going to be talking about more as we analyze the trailer. But, just to give you guys an idea, the only thing that they really have here is single player and online co-op. This, to me, tells me that you should be able to play this game offline. Like, No Man's Sky can be played completely offline. So for those of you that are wondering, oh my god, am I going to have to log in? It's going to be like an MMO type thing. My prediction when it comes to Light No Fire is that if you want to play it completely offline without using any co-op, without nothing, you're probably going to be able to do it. But again, a lot of this stuff is speculation because there really aren't any, hard things when it comes to specifically data on the game. Then we have a press kit here that gives us a little bit of some facts about the game. Hello Games, developers, they're working on Light No Fire. They've worked on No Man's Sky, Joe Danger, The Last Campfire. There's no release date. There's no platforms. This is an interesting one. The fact that there are no platforms. I mean, they're just not ready to announce it yet, but my prediction when it comes to this is taking into account the experience that they've had with the release of No Man's Sky, you're most likely looking at an early access launch on Steam. That would be my initial prediction. I think we're looking at an early access Steam launch, and then it will gradually evolve into the final game that you will see, because if you really think about it, that's what No Man's Sky was. Even though they announced it as a full game release, at the end of the day, No Man's Sky was basically an early access launch, and then they patched the ever-living crap out of it. That's the experience that we've got with that game. Anyway, we then also have here the description. Light No Fire is a game about adventure, building, survival, and exploration together. Set on a fantasy planet the size of Earth. He actually said bigger than Earth in his interview with Jeff Keighley, if you guys paid attention to it. So I'm curious why they're saying planet the size of Earth here, but you guys get the idea. It's going to be a massive planet, because if you think about it, Earth as a planet is huge. There are very few games, I think, that will actually represent a planet properly from a scale perspective. I think Elite Dangerous kind of does that. You can kind of like go to a planet and you can actually see all, the size and scope of the planet. The thing is, in Elite Dangerous, there's not a whole lot to do in most of those planets, whereas the idea here is you have this planet that is procedurally generated, but it is going to be densely packed with activities and stuff for you to do. And I do feel like the first couple of versions of the game are probably going to be a little bit rough, which is the nature of procedural generation. But if they're able to go ahead and, iterate upon it like they've done with No Man's Sky, it's going to be pretty good. Then it goes on to say it brings the depth of a role-playing game to the freedom of a survival sandbox. So you're going to have role-play elements, which we can see in the trailer. And like I said, we're going to be analyzing it a little bit more throughout this video, but it's going to mesh the RPG aspects of a game mixed with a survival sandbox, which we see both of those elements in the game, as well as exploration. Now, we have a list of features here. I'm going to be reading these off just for those of you that are curious about the stuff that is in here. Multiplayer Earth, carve a life together, meet players from across the globe, build a life, explore and survive together, construct persistent buildings and communities, or strike out alone to discover the world for others. A procedural Earth, a truly open world with no boundaries at a scale never attempted before. This is another thing that impresses me, is the scale of this project is insane. Massively varied and dense planet filled with immersive biomes, unique enemies, and valuable resources to discover. A fantasy Earth. Light No Fire presents you with an ancient Earth to uncover, one where you're not the hero. This is an important one. You're just going to be another dude, so there's no main character thing, so to speak here. I think the idea is that you're going to be expected to make your own fun, which is kind of the same situation in No Man's Sky. A lot of the fun things that you do in No Man's Sky, you're usually making your own fun in the game. Thick with lore, mystery, and a constant fight for survival, inspired by the adventure, charm, and imagination we love from classic fantasy. Even though they talk about classic fantasy here, as we will see a little bit later in the trailer, there's also definitely some elements of sci-fi in there. Then we also have an unexplored Earth. Every mountain can be climbed, and below them lie endless vistas, oceans, and continents perhaps no others have seen. Who will climb the tallest mountains? Who will find the deepest sea? Set sail across vast oceans and rivers. Set sail? Do we see boats in the trailer? I don't think we saw boats, but apparently boats is going to be a thing as well. Across vast oceans and rivers, ride wild beasts through fantastical landscapes, fly dragons over undiscovered landscapes. So, yeah, it's pretty much what you see in the trailer. There's not a whole lot of new information here. Sean Murray then posts and he talks about, okay, Light No Fire from the makers of No Man's Sky, an Earth-sized game, oceans, fantasy RPG elements, big chunky dragons, tiny evil skeletons, and there's also the meme that we've all seen by now. Okay, Sean, we don't want to overhype people, so maybe just an Earth-sized game. Sean, I think we, oceans, fantasy RPG elements, big chunky dragons, tiny evil skeletons. Now, an interesting thing when it comes to Light No Fire is that we really don't have any prediction dates whenever it comes to the trailer announcement. We really don't have a whole lot to go off when it comes to this game releasing. However, this particular person here posted on Twitter, this dude called Peaceful Gamer, I just got a Light No Fire ad on Instagram sooneth. So the idea here is, for those of you that are not aware, whenever it comes to advertisement, the most expensive months of the year to advertise in is usually, the end of the year. So you're talking like October, November, December. These are usually, at least traditionally, the most expensive moments of the year to advertise stuff. Why? Because Christmas. People buy a lot of stuff around Christmas. So getting publicity around there is usually, when everything is at a premium. As a matter of fact, that is the reason why most content creators, like we get paid the most for our views and all of that stuff at the end of the year. Because Christmas, big commercial holiday, all of that stuff, everybody wants to advertise a ton, and therefore, the people that have advertisement spots, the most desirable ones, they're going to charge you a premium. So the fact that they're announcing this in December is a big deal because they're starting up their hype cycle very early on. You would expect this to be like, you announce it at the Game Awards. Then at some point next year, you give us an update on when everything is going down. The fact that they're already doing this, I would imagine that their plans to release are within the semester. So this is not something that's going to be dragging on for years. I think potentially within 6 months, we could be looking at, like I said, I think it's going to be an early access release, but potentially within the semester, we're going to be seeing this game come out on early access, at least on Steam. I don't know if they're going to be doing early access on consoles. We shall see how that pans out. Now, some of you might be questioning at this point, do you think this is just going to be a PC release, a console release? Like, what are we looking at? My thought process is, like I said, at least early access on stream. Whether or not they'll do early access on consoles, we shall see, because there's certification processes and all of that stuff. And to be honest, if you're going to be launching on early access, I think the wisest move is just do it on Steam, because early access on consoles is a bit of a pain in a lot of ways, because there's certification processes and all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, Hello Games, like Sean Murray mentioned, is a fairly small team. So you want to be focusing your energy on developing the game and not having to worry too much about the certification process. And then once they get the game in a reasonable state with a lot of feedback from the community and all of that stuff, then they can start thinking about porting stuff over to the consoles and going through the third certification process and all of that jazz. And then the other thing that you guys might be wondering, okay, what about crossplay? No Man's Sky already features full-fledged crossplay with every platform except the Switch, which makes sense because the Switch, there's probably a lot more hurdles to overcome when it comes to that. But you can play from PC with PlayStation 5, with Xbox, PlayStation 5 with just PlayStation 5 straight to Xbox. I've actually done that, and it works pretty seamlessly. Not a whole lot of problems there. Now, in terms of cross-progression, that is currently not in No Man's Sky, and that is something that I would very much like to see. Because, sometimes people, they have the game in two platforms, and it just makes it easier for them to go back and forth between those two platforms. And it just should be something that whenever you have a game like this that has multiplayer elements in multiple platforms, this should just be the standard moving forward. Not just crossplay, but also cross progression. But those are my thoughts in terms of like release date, what the game is going to be like, all of that stuff. Now, let's actually go ahead and speculate on this trailer. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce the volume significantly. As a matter of fact, I'm going to mute the whole thing because I just want to talk over it as we go through. You guys have already seen the trailer once, so that shouldn't really be a big deal. Let's get to it. So, first shot of the trailer, we see a multiplayer Earth. You see 4 players. So to me, this is kind of like an indication that even though you're going to be able to see a bunch of players out in the world and all of that stuff, the game should be kind of designed around the 4-player co-op aspect, which is, like I said, this would be my preferred scenario anyway. Because to me, 4-player co-op in general is much better than when you have 20, 50, 30 people, because it's just very hard to balance combat scenarios whenever you have that ridiculous amount of people in the world. Whereas if you have 4 people and you balance stuff around for 4 people, those usually tend to be the better experience with scaling difficulty in case you just have, 2 people there or 3 people there or whatever. So that would be my prediction. Now, another thing is that you have a couple of different characters here. One of them is a rabbit person, which apparently there's a rabbit type race in this fantasy game. I'm sure that Zepla is going to appreciate that. But, and then we have a couple of humanoids, and maybe even this person's a little bit more tribal. We have some bows in here. This dude's got a backpack. So we got 3 bow users, and I'm assuming this guy might be maybe a little bit more melee, or maybe because he has a backpack, he acts as more of a support type role, because this is going to be a fantasy game. I don't know if there's going to be a trinity of roles, so to speak, which is something that we usually see in MMORPGs, where you have, your tank, your healer, your DPSer, all of that stuff. But I could see this being a party of like 3 hunters that are going to deal damage, and then 1 dude that's more in a support type role, which would be a cool thing if you have roles like this. Now, to say a multiplayer Earth, clearly implicating that there's going to be multiplayer in the game. A procedural Earth, this implies that not everything is going to be manually designed, which, when you have a project of this scale, that is normal. But just look at the visual detail and the gorgeous art style that we have here. I think the game looks really good. And you also have like some type of ancient civilization thing going on here, which I think is going to be interesting. And I think it is going to introduce some sci-fi elements as well. This is not just going to be classic fantasy. There is going to be sci-fi elements in here as well. Whether or not this is going to be linked somehow to No Man's Sky, we shall see, but the logo definitely implies that. And you also here you can see that there's going to be mounts in the game straight off the bat. A fantasy Earth. So here you see like these little tiny skeletons and whatnot, and this clearly implicates, whenever I see a skeleton, the first thing that instantly comes to mind is like, oh, dungeon crawling. There's going to be dungeon crawling. I think there's indisputable that you're not going to have fantasy elements in a game without having dungeon crawling, right? Oh, I was looking at like the play timer, and I was like, why is it not moving? It's because YouTube was breaking. So yeah, we have tiny evil skeletons. An unexplored Earth. See, here again, we have like some type of ancient civilization thing where nature is kind of like taken over. And once again, we see 4 players. Notice how in a lot of these shots you see 4 players. In my opinion, this clearly indicates 4-player co-op as opposed to just like full-on traditional MMO stuff. But a cool thing is in here we have 2 more races. So there's this race of dudes, which are like big hulking dudes. Then you have like these tinier dudes. Not sure if they're gnomes, maybe dwarves. We're going to have dwarves, Sean? Can I have like a fantasy muscly dwarf? Can I have that? Bro, that'll be the best. If I get to be like a dwarf. Oof. Like big beard, big chunky beard. Then okay, so it looks like those smaller dudes are actually like walrus people. You can clearly see it here. It's a walrus person. Listen, Sean, I don't want a walrus person. I want the dwarf. Now, in here, another interesting thing is that we actually have some UI elements present on screen. So you'll notice that right now there's this indicator on the lower left. Now, I think that this thing on the... Let me actually zoom out here so that you can see this proper. I think that this thing in the bottom here actually is the time of day due to other elements that I have seen throughout the UI and whatnot in different sections of the trailer. So I think the very lower corner of the ball here indicates time of day. This indicates where you're at because you see this is a fish and right now people are underwater. And then in here there appears to be some type of temperature thing that tells you how cold it is because there's going to be survival elements. So you're probably going to have to bundle up if you're in a situation where things are cold. And then this is probably going to be some type of health indicator. This is in the same spot that you have your shields whenever it comes to No Man's Sky. So I don't think it would be too surprising that that was the case. Also notice that under the water here, there's like a wreckage of a ship. So there's probably going to be wreckage diving where you're going to be going down there and retrieving treasures and whatnot. Not sure if there's going to be combat underwater. And there's also some type of indicator here of the weapon that you have maybe, which is a staff, I would assume. But once again, you can see that there's a multitude of players. You have the walrus people. This dude's got his hands covering, I don't know what he is, maybe like a small human, another walrus person, but there's definitely a lot of animal-like races that you can be if you would prefer to be that as opposed to a human, which is a good thing. Diversity of choice is good. And then we see dragons. Obviously, we're going to be able to fly. Also, just look at the absolute scale of this mountain. It is massive. And this I think, is what Sean is talking about. Whenever it comes to the sheer scale of this game, you want something that is massive. Also notice that all of a sudden, this particular icon changed, whereas before we had a fish type icon indicating you're underwater. Right now we have a leaf type icon indicating that you're in the overworld. So, just something to keep in mind. Now, in here, I want to pay close attention to these shots. Let's actually slow things down a little bit. I really want to take it nice and slow so we can pause on each of the shots. Okay, so here we have like a wizard. I think that a character like this showing up on the trailer clearly indicates there's going to be a magic system. I mean, this is a magical staff. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no UI elements in this shot, but there is some kind of a floating cube on there. Again, this to me screams like sci-fi elements in my fantasy game, which is actually something that I like. I like it when fantasy kind of like mixes a little bit with sci-fi. I think it creates an interesting backdrop. But yeah, this dude clearly some type of a spellcaster, a sorcerer or whatever. Then in here we see gliders. So probably before you even get, probably before you even get dragons to ride, you're going to get some simple gliders or something like that. And then in here we see a bunny person jumping on top of a bird. And then we're back to the normal trailer. I'm going to go back to normal speed here. Let's go ahead and carry on. Okay, so here we start seeing the first examples of building. Now, for those of you that never really played No Man's Sky also has base building, and it is actually very intuitive. It is super easy to make cool-looking stuff in No Man's Sky, in my opinion. More so than a lot of other survival games that I've played, where you try to making something, you try to make something that looks cool, and you end up with buildings that just look bland and uninteresting. in No Man's Sky, you can definitely make some really cool looking buildings without having like super in-depth knowledge of, the way that the system itself works, which is cool. And you can see here that there's more than 4 players. Now, we don't know if all of these are players. Maybe some of them are NPCs. I think it'd be more interesting if all of them were players because, like I said, I want it to be 4-player co-op, but that doesn't mean that there can't be more people in the world. So maybe you can have like a village, but then you form out parties of 4 whenever you're going out to combat or something like that. That could be a cool thing, which I'll see how that works out. But it definitely feels like they also want the possibility to just have like a seamless world where you can see other players doing their own thing and whatnot. This appears to be a little community forming. Clearly, there's resource gathering in the form of you chopping down trees. You're probably going to be able to mine some rocks as well because you can see this particular house here has a mixture of wood, foliage, and rocks. But yeah, just like more traditional survival elements, building all of that stuff. Also, you can see some rudimentary type of like, I don't know, forge or oven or something of that nature to be able to, basically use fire for constructions. You also see a lamp, which means probably by the time nighttime comes, you're going to be needing some source of fire. And if you think about it, not some source of fire, but some source of light. And if you think about it, the title of the game is Light No Fire. I think this indicates that at nighttime, things are going to get very dangerous, which is why it says light no fire, because maybe if there's too much light, monsters will come or whatever. We'll see. But I definitely think there's some type of element to it. Now, notice once again, this is like the second shot that we see of the mountain. Pay attention to this tower, because basically this just shows you the overall scale of the game. Now we're going to go from here, we're going to go all the way up to the top of the mountain. Whoa, 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 whoa. It's again... Sean really likes to pepper in these like all of the sudden. I was like, oh, here we go. So we're going to slow it down and show me these shots one by one. So number 1, that is a big ass dragon right there. But, this is one of the reasons why I was asking, are there ships in the game? Because you see the trailer, but this is basically like, a flashback sequence. So you don't really pay that much attention to it. But yeah, there's definitely ships here, and as you can see, it's multi-crewed, and there's a badger type. It's a badger? I think this is a badger, right? There's a badger type race in here as well. So we've seen seal people, bunny people, badger people, humans. It's like, bro, I just want a short, stocky, bulky human, dude. I want a fantasy dwarf. Sean Murray, please, please, the dwarves. Okay, and here we finally see some combat. You can see, okay, there's definitely more than 4 players. So even though my initial theory was like 4-player co-op, and here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 if that's a player. I don't know if that's a player though. Dude, this goes by so fast. But yeah, they're hunting a herd here. Maybe they're hunting for meat or something like that. I love the armors. Like the diversity of armors, pretty nice. Even though in here everybody's wearing an orange cloak, maybe they're all at the same progression stage. And this dude's got really long ears. Elves confirmed. Fire sword. Holy crap, look at that crab. Look at that vicious looking crab. But yeah, we have a dude here with a fire sword. It almost feels like he's holding like a lantern in his hand or something. The combat looks impactful, even though we only have a couple of frames of it, like the melee combat. This is very important for me. I need melee combat to feel weighty and impactful. Whether or not they're going to be able to do this, we shall see, because I believe that in No Man's Sky, there's only ranged combat from what I've played in that game. So, yeah, I hope that they're able to nail down the visceral feel of melee combat, because otherwise... it's going to be a little bit frustrating. But I like the fact that they already got like, oh man, we got fire swords. Look at this. Big fire right there. And then in here we have them going back to the main trailer with dragons and whatnot. And now they're going to be doing the flyover in the mountain. So there's definitely going to be flight. Now, an important thing when it comes to flight, right? Whenever it comes to fantasy games, a lot of fantasy games make the mistake of, especially MMORPGs, they make that mistake of like, oh, we're just going to make it swim in the air. I hope that's not the case. But then again, they already have the experience of flying spaceships with some type of physics, so it wouldn't surprise me that these would have physics. We're talking like, whenever it comes to mounts like this, the comparison that I always like to bring up is like, make it like Guild Wars 2, all right? Guild Wars 2 has the best mounts in the business. The way that they dynamically fly through the scenery and whatnot. I'm hoping that's the same stuff that we're going to be getting from these. Definitely feels like that because you can see them do acceleration and then swooping up. Okay, let's take another slow look at these because they give us a lot of a lot of flashback stuff. Look in here at the lower right hand side. Notice how that swapped. Earlier, we've seen staff. We've seen torch. Now we see bow. Now, let me go ahead and swap over to slower speed. I want to pause on those next couple of sections that we're going to be seeing in the trailer here. Analyzing the crap out of them. Okay, so here we see a different dragon flying through a storm. It's got big horns. And here we see this dude flying on a bird. This is actually something that I really appreciate. Because personally, I don't just want to fly dragons. There's a lot of games where you can fly dragons. I'm like, oh, I want to fly something maybe more interesting. It'd be cool if we could find a phoenix. Me personally, I'm a sucker for phoenix, the mythological creature. That would be nice. But birds work too. I like birds. Then here we see another dragon flying through. This almost reminds me of Xenoblade. I don't know about you guys, but I get some Xenoblade vibes from this scene specifically. And in here, they're going up the mountain. Okay, so here we're back at the trailer. No more flashback scenes. Let's go back to normal speed. And see, this is the mountain that you were seeing from the bottom. And you can tell because of this tower here. If you go back in the video, you can see the tower. Some type of floating platform there. Maybe you can do some questing in there. Wait, was that some pop-in with the rocks? Oh, yeah, you can see the pop-in of the rocks right there. Gotta work on that, Sean. Gotta work on that. Some draw distance. Now, realistically, on something of this scale, that is not going to bother me at all, but I know that a lot of people have huge issues with pop-in. Like, it breaks their immersion, which is understandable. Yeah, that little city up there is interesting. I wonder if that can be player-made. Now, in here, we get a very different vibe, almost like a post-apocalyptic vibe. You know, you got like these roots coming out of the ground and whatnot. You have these. This is again one of the more animalistic races that we see here with the fur and all that. He's got a tail going on. Almost got some biomutant vibes. Their stuff is made out of scales, which is interesting. And then you have this dude almost looks like he's got a hazard suit on. Maybe this particular part, there's like toxic rains or something. And then in here, I mean, come on, this is 1,000,000% sci-fi elements. This is pretty much like straight out of No Man's Sky, even. Like, these are like the pillars that you go to in No Man's Sky, and you go like, teach me a new word or something like that. Right? Except in here is just a giant thing, and it moves. So in here, you definitely get more. I mean, sure, there's still a lot of fantasy there, but it's crossing into sci-fi, in my opinion. Then in here, you see a hunting party, almost, of players and ground mounts, and then another player on a dragon. Again, this dude's rocking a staff, so he's probably going to be a mage. It definitely reinforces the idea of classes to me. Yeah, we see them run around in these plains, and another thing that they're doing with the trailers, they're showing you all the different biomes that you're going to have available in this one planet. As opposed to like right now, if you go to a planet in No Man's Sky, usually the biome is fairly similar throughout the whole planet. It's like each planet has one biome, whereas in here, it's like everything is different. And again, another scene here, this looks like a typical RPG scene of like a party of players arriving at a town, right? Maybe in a lot of the situations that we've seen more than 4 players, it might actually be NPCs. Who knows? I like the weapons on them, though. Oh, here we go. Sword. Lower right-hand side sword. So probably the character that is being focused on is this one. He's got a sword and shield. Looks pretty badass too. I like that. And you can see actually references of the... Well, these are probably just shields on the wall. And then there's a bunch of NPCs just kneeling down. And then there's this dude right here. Looks like someone important. Like maybe he's your boss, gives you quests or something like that, because your party is definitely heading towards him. Like maybe you can come to... Oh, maybe he's the blacksmith actually, because there's an axe thing here and whatnot. Maybe you can upgrade your gear at this dude. Yeah, that's probably the blacksmith. Again, another dude in a dragon swooping through. And again, this does look like physics-based flight, which is a good thing. Again, another reference to ancient civilization here in the back. Get some sci-fi vibes. And then we have the cut to the logo. Sorry about this, guys. It's just the cold and messes with my throat. But yep. That is everything we know so far, at least that I'm aware of, in regards to Light No Fire. I'll be updating you guys on this game as things move forward, because personally I am very, very interested in playing the crap out of this. Maybe we'll even do some No Man's Sky streams here in the channel, because I did recently buy No Man's Sky for PC. Maybe I'll be able to set up a HOTAS, which is like something that I would love to do. Maybe start a fresh save file on No Man's Sky as well. I don't know. We'll see how things pan out. But for now, let me know what you guys think about Light No Fire. Personally, I'm very hyped. I understand that for a lot of you guys are going to be like, oh, I got burned by No Man's Sky already. Me personally, I never really felt burned by No Man's Sky. I understand that there were some things that were promised that were not kept, but at the end of the day, the gameplay was still pretty good. And at this point, the game is way better and features way more stuff than they ever promised on it. It is potentially the best space game. I know that a lot of people swear by Star Citizen. To me, it's like, look, Star Citizen ain't even out yet. And, you know, they basically just sell you ships for thousands of dollars, which is absolutely ridiculous. So whatever. But I've got faith on this team, personally. I know that that's going to be somewhat controversial for a lot of people, but that's the way that I feel. Let me know what you think about Light No Fire in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.